Hello, everyone. Welcome to this conversation. So, my name is Benjamin Moore, and I am a co founder at the Church of the Sacred Synthesis. And I'm joined by Ian Benouis, who is also a co founder at the Church of the Sacred Synthesis, and amongst many other accolades throughout his life. And so, it's really an honor to be able to talk to my longtime friend and confidant, trusted confidants. Ian, thanks for so much for joining today.
Thanks for having me, man. I know we've been sort of waiting for this for a long time.
Yeah, very long time. And well, it's quite interesting as we were chatting a little bit before we went live here. The um yeah, the psychedelic say like the psychedelic space has really transformed quite a bit over the past couple of years when we started this. So there's some interesting developments that have happened in that world and also in our world here, speaking specifically about psilomethoxin and the emergent the emergence of this really important compound in my opinion. What is psilomethoxin? That's maybe a great way to just well, we'll do a little highlight and then we can sort of flesh out beyond that. What is it?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What is it and why does anybody care about it? Well, so Psilomethoxin, I have to put it sort of in front of my face, I think, right, to make sure the backgrounding doesn't trip on it too hard. But in any case, Psilomethoxin is, just people can see it, is 4-hydroxy 5-methoxy DMT. Okay. So it's a tryptamine molecule. And I'll for sure reference it as we go. Its history is that Marc Julia, top French chemist ever, pretty much in 1965, synthesized it in a 10-step process from the Mexican vanilla orchid, starting with his orthovanillin. And he wasn't so much just trying to make cimethoxy, he was trying to do some of the tryptamine chemistry to show, like, right, what you could make and sort of, the synthetic pathways you could work with off of a biosynthetic pathway. And the last thing he made in the 10-step process was the cimethoxin, which like any of these hydroxylated tryptamines, they're very subject to oxidation and degradation very fast if put out in the open. So, minutes, hours, it's turned black and can't be preserved, can't, for a reference standard, can't be taken as a bioassay, can't have any further testing on it. Yeah. And so then they kind of sat there as a historical artifact. And in 2005, uh, Shishilgin, one of our many godfathers, or one of our godfathers, he was asking a question: how come psilomethoxin isn't in your book TCAL, tryptamines I've known and loved? And he said, well, I give you even odds if you get 5-MeO DMT, mushroom spores, and cow manure, and you put them together, that you'll make psilomethoxin. This is he's the guy for psychedelic chemistry, and for him to give this sort of weird, more cryptic treasure map, which yeah, we came across later. But the history of it, it was sort of waiting for somebody who wanted to unlock this treasure map. And yeah, and I did, because I wanted to figure out a way to have oral 5-MeO, that sort of bioavailability track pathway graph, without having to use monoamine oxidase inhibitor or anything else. How could I get the oral 5-MeO smoothed out? That was the inspiration, or that was the question that I was trying to look for, which is how we found this as a thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so, when you and I first started working closely together, that was more around 5-MeO DMT, right? Through
Yeah,
specifically through natural pathways, right, through bufo alvarius, but also through some synthesized, versions of
yeah,
5-MeO. In my understanding at the time, is such an important and profound compound in the surrender part of the experience, where the population that we were really focused on serving, which was veterans at the time, so, like, was really needed, right? We have all these other psychedelics that people people classically understand, which is, psilocybin, LSD.
yeah. They make people talk more. They make people talk more.
Exactly. So they're activators, right? They are really activating the sensory experience, and
Yeah,
most of the population that we work with have already are overactivated, right? They do
yeah,
work by resetting that system, but they still were served by having something that could work in a different part of the nervous system, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is why 5-MeO is so profound in transforming individuals, especially high performing individuals in the military, which carry a lot of information, a lot of activation. Like, they just want to relax. And we call it anxiety, but it's really like a hyper attunement to everything that's happening around and then weighing out all these different possibilities. And it creates an overactive mind, a monkey mind, as they're
Yeah.
calling it these days, right? And so
Yeah.
when we watch 5-MeO, could really tune that down and silence it. However, MEO is such a powerful, transformative compound that oftentimes it creates a massive pendulum swing back, right? So there's a lot of pieces to pick up, or what they call integration, right? It's like, what do I do with all this stuff? All this freedom and space. And so, yeah, enter Psilomethoxin, which is a really beautiful, gentle way to ease that tension in the body and the mind, while also still providing a little bit of stim in the 2A receptor, right? And
Sure.
I just want to touch a little bit on what people sort of understand about psychedelics. And most people are carrying, I would say, like a Netflix documentary level psychedelic knowledge, right? And most people think psychedelics is like, ooh, like all this information, colors, but really psychedelic just means mind revealing. So it's like, what is truly within, and can we actually access it and connect with it? And so not all psychedelics are the same, as we're learning here. And so within the brain, there are receptors, which they're basically like docking stations on the outside of your cells that these compounds bind with, and then they signal some changes within the cell. And so serotonin actually doesn't penetrate the cell wall. It binds to the outside of the cell, and it gives the cell instructions on um, to change or to let go of things, right? And psychedelics, as we know them now, like psilocybin, 5-MeO-DMT, DMT, et cetera, they actually can penetrate the cell wall and go inside the cell and signal directly, right? And what we know is that 5-MeO-DMT actually can penetrate the cell wall at a higher level than most other psychedelics, and it's because of the 5-methoxy group. And what we're learning now with all the science is that psilomethoxin can do the same thing, yet it can bind with the 1A receptor and then with the 2A receptor, but also what they're saying is it can attenuate the 2A, so actually turn down the activation. So it will bind with the that receptor, but reduce the information that's being produced, right? So it can really help align thought, align consciousness, and be in a state of presence. So as we discover this uh, super important compound, and have been working through these past few years of really fighting, honestly, and I don't want to necessarily fight, but really fighting to continue to bring it forward to people, because we know how important it is that people have access to this beyond all these, I want to say, like classic psychedelics, which already are being spoken for and people are really supporting, which is beautiful. However, my belief is we're over medicalizing their use, right? Which is continuing to put it again in another cage in some ways. And so, with that being said, like, how I'll ask you this, like, how do you see the landscape of psychedelics and psilomethoxin fitting into that space?
Wow, that's a that's a big question. Yeah, I think we don't know our HT1A from our HT2A, so we don't know some of these like components, right? Of our sort of if you think of ourselves as a vehicle, uh, definitely HT1A is the overall brake for the whole system, right? It's the surrender where you can't go anywhere. And 5-HT2A is helping change your perspective so you can adapt to the changes in the environment, right? And then come up with a new way to see things. But and we also know if you're always shaking the snow globe all the time, you never settle down and figure out what your core identity is to recalibrate from. So yeah, I think the thing was that I was with 5-MeO, just to circle it back. I was blown away with the effects of the afterglow. Of course, the go all the way in unity consciousness is amazing, but the afterglow of all that, yeah, neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, right? Reduction of that neuroinflammation is just incredible. And I really wanted to tap into that. And Yeah, I've totally forgot where we're going now at this juncture, but,
We're
yeah.
freestyling. So
Yeah,
yeah. So along this journey that we were on, you know,
yeah.
we tested it for a long time. You know, almost a year.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I wanna jump in and say, dude, we tested ourselves
Yeah.
in amongst
Exactly.
ourselves, major dietas, and then we share it with
Right.
all the heads because
Exactly.
we're not stupid,
Yeah,
and,
so we just wanted to
yeah,
get like I would say quote like a textural analysis, like,
yeah,
what is this? What does it feel like to you?
yeah,
And 9 times out of 10, they came back, this is 5-MeO, right?
yes,
This is a low
yes,
dose of 5-MeO when taken orally, and that was what we knew we knew to be true in our experience, and, you know, I wanna make sure that we're highlighting that the original this is the original way that our ancestors would take things, work with them and say, okay, this is effective. And I can now offer them to my tribe. Right. Like, you know, you
exactly.
on these movies or even like documentaries, like the medicine people were these radical, you know, very eccentric beings who obviously they had the appearance and you could tell that they were very expanded consciously. You know, different approaches, very unique approaches to sound and to light, and they would work with people in their tribes to help them understand what was going on with them emotionally or energetically. And to do that, they were taking plants and animals into their body and helping their body soften so they can actually connect more deeply to like the great expanse, the great universe. So what we did essentially is that approach, right? We use some of this ancient wisdom to say, let's take it and see what it feels like. Okay, it feels really amazing. Let's share this. And doing that, of course, say like the current market, they don't like they don't like free radicals, right? They
Oh,
don't like
exactly, exactly, yeah, they
yeah,
wanna remove those from the equation.
exactly, because they're in a way of Jesus, we're providing liberation to people by saying you can take this and become your own healer. You can see the things that are ailing you. You can see what you can do, and you can do this at home. And that is an affront to the current narrative of the pharmaceutical approach. And as we're seeing here in the current state of psychedelics, they're all taking on a pharmaceutical approach, right? They're going in, they're doing research, they're getting their compound in studies, and now then they're selling to someone else that's bigger. They're like, we're gonna kind of capital out of this. And I'm starting to see it unfold across the board. And so where is the medicine for the people? Right? And this is really important because this is what you and I have always talked about the Psilomethoxin is, right? It's a medicine for the people. And yes, of course, there has to be some commercial approaches to like creating infrastructure around getting it to people and supporting their process, yet not being the reason why, right? The reason why is to get medicine to the people. And because they are worthy of this, they are worthy of holding the power within their own hands. And so of course, there was some controversy around this that we've been really in a war, so to speak, right? It seems like, you know, they talk about this like spiritual war. Really, the essence of that is what we've been within for the past couple of years. And so, you know, I'd love to, if you're open to speak about what you've gone through and some of the work you've put in to help to vindicate the truth. I want to always make sure that for me and me personally, like my main focus is to bring the truth forward so that people have the most information possible to make the decision themselves. And so in the journey of exposing the truth, what was that like for you over the past, I would say, since, you know, finding this really important piece that helps us really finalize, I'll say, like the exposure of Psilomethoxin and the truth behind it. Like, what was that like going through that process?
Wow, so keep me on track and, well, it's excuse me. It's been prison and paradise at the same time because it's been this crazy bubble where I could really go all the way with all this information around this amazing compound. And at the same time, that was all in the context of proving our truth that by someone else attacking our credibility, there you go, put us on the defensive. So we've had to be on the defensive while we were proving it. And just like you, all I care about is the truth. People are so hung up these days about being right and wrong, all that virtue signaling. I just care about the truth. I want to find out. And so when we shared this with all the wizards, and they're like, yeah, this is a 5-HT1A effect, we're like, cool, we're going to go with that. And yeah, there's some 5-HT2A, but that's secondary, whatever. And so well, I think it's going to probably help me and the listeners talk about it at least in a linear fashion, right? So 3 years ago, the art fungi fiction article came out. And then 2 years ago, we had our defamation lawsuit, which so far is up on appeal, right? After a pre-trial motion, anti-slap was granted. And that's where it's sitting right now. And yeah, so we let's see, maybe I'll start in December. I'll start in this past December of 2025. So yeah, so we've been working with well, yeah, story as much as possible. So okay, so uh, Greg Lake, one of our co-founders, who's no longer a member of the church, but he's our outside counsel in our defamation case. He met Peter Hendricks, who just came out with that cocaine and psilocybin study, 10-year study, at a conference. They hit it off, and then Peter Hendricks provided Greg some support, some of his, entheogenic like ayahuasca cases. And then in our case, Peter Hendricks was able to connect us to Elizabeth Gardner and Jesse Hines. And Elizabeth Gardner was the director of the forensic science group at the UAB. She's one of the top forensic analytical chemists in the country. And then Jesse Hines is one of the top mass spec guys in the country. And so we've been working with them for the past, with Jesse, 2 years, right? And it wasn't until this past December that Jesse finally got access to the machine that allowed this to be now definitive. Whereas when we first measured our stuff at the University of South Florida, not knowing that uh, Chris Witowski, the CEO of Silera, had got his PhD there in 2014, and they were partnered, USF and Silera. When we first measured our sacrament 235.15, it was inconclusive because it could be lots of different compounds. But when you measure it at the level that Jesse Hines was able to on his thermoscientific Orbitrap fusion Lumos hybrid mass spec, then it really narrows the field down to about four things. So basically, once that happened, maybe I can talk to that. Where Jesse texted me in December, I was in Alabama at my dad's place, and said, "Yeah, found it again." This he's run it like over 12 times. He found it, and I'm like, "Awesome, right?" Uh, then then I went back home, and this is the part where people can really get into. Then I'm like, oh wow, so this is great. So we found it again, and I'm still in this NMR reference standard world. That's what people are going to say. Where's your NMR? Where's your reference standard? And I said, that's such a lame synthetic chemistry kind of angle for the movie. That to make it and to prove it is all in the same thing. I'm like, there's got to be more than this. And that's when I sat down and went deep in the AI for the past 4 to 5 months, right? And started doing research. But what I really sat down to do was to look at the different studies around psilocybin analogs, and making all these things from yeast and bacteria or on a bigger scale. And that's when I sat down and read the BUFO studies, as we nicely refer to them as. And the BUFO studies are both Schwelm and Lucioni. Schwelm in 2022, right? Schwelm in 2022, where for the first time ever, they found mexamine, 5-MeO, NMT, just one methyl group in there. And then they found for the first time ever the two hydroxylated isomers of 5-MeO DMT. And, exactly. And I'm like, what? And then to top it off, just for good measure, thank God, The Lucioni study came out in 2025, which just replicated their study. We added some other things to it and whatnot, but basically replicated the data in their study, found those two isomers. So what makes all that unique is that, I came back home in December before Christmas, and I read that stuff, and I was like, wait, there's these, break down these different fragments, right? These different pieces. I said, this has got to be then now distinguishable. What Jesse had done running it on this machine, right? And what they're showing in these papers. And that's when I went back in January and visited my dad again. January was back in Alabama like 4 times. And I went to visit my dad and, visited Jesse. Yeah, I walked in with the Bufo study and I just said, dude, if we know this, and you have these fragments, these measurements, right? Can we like suss all this out? And he started going into ChemDraw and drawing out the pictures. And basically within 5 minutes, we're like, yeah, these are different fragments with different weights, different breakdown pathways. And at that point, yeah, we like high fived and we're like, yeah, psilocybin confirmed. Well, yeah. Uh, the rest of it's been this amazing scientific ride of discovery and all that. And at the same time, we live in this super hyper medicalization world that the medicalization machine sees us as a threat and has to attack us. And so the only way we can communicate back with them is by suing them in these lawsuits. And this one's a doozy. This one's a doozy.
Yeah, yes, you're referring to the trade secret lawsuit, right?
Yeah,
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 yeah. This is very important, right? Because this actually is how do I say this? Yes, it's just all about business disparagement, and like what we're seeing is like
yeah, yeah,
there's obvious commercial interest that the publishers have in silencing what we're doing because
yeah.
as
Or
you share
controlling the narrative, whatever
right
sounds,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so we have, we've created real estate and and
yeah.
they don't like it because it's very close to the real estate that they have created.
Exactly. We can our real estate, we go with our signs, go free 5 MEO, and they can be over there like, no, charge for 5 MEO and don't,
That's right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, it was so
Yes.
interesting because some of the data that we use to confirm psilomethoxin being created is the data that was literally published by the publishers and that they said wasn't possible, saying that the mushroom
Yeah. Yeah.
enzymes couldn't make psilomethoxin, yet they used mushrooms and enzymes to make their very, very close cousin compound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
really bad. I mean, yeah, exactly. What part do you want to talk about? Yeah. So let's see. We can start where I got A+ in trade secrets in law school. Yeah. And yeah, I loved my professor. I was almost going to go work with him, but he was kind of at the end of his career, sort of retiring. And yeah, then I was involved in one of the biggest trade secret cases in the country between Cadence and Avanti, electronic design, automation, EDA tools, right? And then, yeah, because when this case was a defamation case, right? It really was about the value of our reputations, and whether we're public figures or how valuable our reputation is. When it's a trade secret case, it's totally different. When and I mean by they, I mean Hamilton Morris, Sona Promega, they had unauthorized access that we didn't grant, that I didn't grant, of our sacrament, so that they could test it, so that they could reverse engineer it, so they could figure out how we were able to successfully make psilocybin in the sacrament when Alexander Sherwood, their top chemist, posted on Reddit that he made it and that he couldn't preserve it. So this was a way for him to have access to the prototype,
exactly.
potentially years ahead of the other methods, whether synthetic or otherwise, would have allowed him to achieve. So that's the entire trade secret lawsuit. We can get into the economics and the different molecules and how people. I'm just more saying how people are trying to protect their patent thickets and offensive and
Yeah.
defensive patent mechanisms. But the bottom line is They can't afford to have anyone mess with their narrative, and their narrative is worth money because the IP market is a psychological market, right?
Yeah.
And
And it
the
seems like
values
it,
are
like,
all well, the values are made up. They're made up.
right. And
So
if you look at what's happening right now in psychedelics, we can even comment on that. Atai's looking to sell their Beckley's looking to sell their nasal spray.
they're putting
Just
it up on sale. It's hilarious, bro. It's just like
exactly. So in this,
buy my 5-MeO nasal spray.
if that's any indicator, and other companies have done this before, they're just getting their compound into studies and then trying to cash out.
Yes, yes. Which can I ask you a question, Ben? Doesn't
Yeah,
that
yeah.
make you curious then as to why 5-MeO was put on the schedule out of nowhere in 2011 to then now be bought to come back off?
Well, exactly. It's very interesting and curious, and the fact that 5-MeO isn't hallucinogenic,
Yeah,
right? And
nobody
so
cared about it. Nobody knew about it
no,
when it was made
exactly.
illegal. So that's the first giveaway. I didn't know that happened as someone who's been into it, smoked it in 1995. I didn't know that was happening. I didn't have clips, one worrying going like, I hope they don't emergency schedule 5-MeO DMT out of nowhere.
Sure, exactly. And thankfully, we have an awakened community. When they tried to schedule those 5 tryptamines in 2022, the whole yeah, everyone was up in arms, and then they had to backtrack, and which to me is like a real tell. We didn't have
Yeah.
that level of
Can,
support in 2011, right? But we do
yeah.
now.
Can we talk? I'd love to talk about that, Ben. Those
Yeah,
five tryptamines. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
we are.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, because this is all tied into our church history as well.
exactly. That was an indicator for us. We were like, "Wait a minute. They're gonna they're not gonna pursue scheduling. They're gonna just completely shelve
Yeah.
that plan." Like,
Well, because
yeah,
we
we're
stood.
full
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah. Well, because we stood up against it. That's
Right,
where we
exactly.
made the determination. We said, okay. They wanted to schedule 5-MeO MIPT, which I've smoked 50 times. I've experienced with, and people stood up against it. Amy
Which is the
Rising.
closest, which is the
Yeah, according to Ralph Meltzer, was another one of our godfathers, our godparents. Yeah, and so we're like, okay, if they're going to use the Analog Act rationale to argue, where psilomethoxin, it's further away than 5-MeO MIPT. So 5-MeO MIPT is safe, then we're safe. And then we're also like, wow, this is when they, like you said, when they relented. I said, this is the beginning of the end of the drug war. Right. This is the administration no longer going on the offensive, and it's our turn. But what happened was Amy was part of the lawsuit. You had some people, some corporations, some psychedelic corporations, right, that were part of it. And Amy Rising, co-founder of our church, she's our chief regulatory person in Washington D.C. She was part of it as an individual, as a veteran, as a healthcare advocate, and they kicked her out of the suit because she didn't have any corporate interests in the suit, and therefore she wasn't a corporation, so she wasn't people.
which is,
But corporations were in the lawsuit, and we were just
all these
like,
weird legal definitions, right? This is what we
dude,
get.
I said this thing is going to die. Here's why, like, because this is never going to go to trial because this is a pile of crap, man. This is no way. So I think when the judge just realized what a toxic piece of waste this case was going to be, she just dumped it. She just dumped it. And then people had to just go up to DC and show some signs, you know what I mean? And then people are like, cool. They're not the Joe Biden Analog Act, right? Is not yes, I mean an offensive weapon the government's going to be using against the citizens anymore.
They can't. They can't. We were actually chatting a little about the Analog Act previous to jumping on here, and just to bring it into view. All these things are like, oh, is this an analog of psilocybin or something else that's scheduled? And could psilomethoxin be an analog, or thought to be an analog? So
Yeah.
could it be scheduled because of that? I'm like, well, serotonin's an analog of psilocybin.
Everything's an analog of everything else. It's the
Right.
stupidest
So I'm like,
thing.
okay, so they're gonna start scheduling serotonin, melatonin, like these are all analogs. So like,
Yeah.
it's a
Well,
very
you just
simple but complex.
Well, you were saying basically like these are all tryptophan derivatives, like, right?
All of it all,
There's 20,
exactly.
I'm just saying there's 20 different amino acids. So this is saying like all the different things you could make from tryptophan. So 5-MeO MIPT is a tryptophan derivative. So it's just people's nomenclature is sloppy. Then they don't know their science, they're science illiterate, yet they're science-ism believers, right? Those are the worst. Just like, other kinds of people who have,
Was it you that shared, maybe I saw yesterday, that they found tryptophan in asteroid fragments on Earth
yeah,
that are older than that are older than our planet,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so we're talking, well,
Which means,
if we're
which means
going
they could be
there,
other places too.
well, they definitely are other places, right? And so we're as a way of understanding our brain chemistry, tryptophan is one of the essential amino acids that we don't manufacture within our body. We actually have to put
Exactly.
it in us, so it just creates it creates the experience of, I don't know, connection to the stars, right? When we say these things like, we come from the stars, there's a very clear picture. And now we're finding evidence of this in the molecular chemistry of our building blocks. These are built
Amen.
blocks of our planet, which is us.
Yeah. And we're the little children playing with the building blocks.
Right. Right. So, it's funny and sort of humorous, but also it also speaks a lot about how far we've fallen to be talking about substances that are endogenous to us and having to fight to liberate them so that we can, regain access to our consciousness and our own experience. And this is part of the reason why there's so much suffering in the world is we decided at some point in the human history that we knew more than God, his nature, right? We knew more than nature, and we were going to start to control people by removing their access to certain parts of nature. So we're in that now. It's a beautiful emergence that we're experiencing because people are just like in other places and other aspects of humanity. We're sort of over being controlled, and we're at a place of liberation, and that's what the church really is an important element in that. And thank God for the founders to enshrine our rights to to
Yeah.
our rights
Well,
to commune
yeah.
with our own ways to connect with God, through the First Amendment, and the continued support of that in many different states. Texas being a very important aspect. We have two different ways that we enshrine our rights here in Texas, not just federally, but
Yeah.
also by state, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Best state in the country for that.
well,
Yeah.
exactly. And so, you know, whether or not it was for this purpose, liberating one thing liberates everything. So, yeah.
Yeah. What do we want to talk about? I want to make sure we can talk about some myths, and we can talk about some, myths and things out there, like changing our name because of the article or things like that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, well, that I'm not always privy necessarily to like what's being shared, but we can definitely
That
touch
that
on
that's a trope. That's a trope that just gets retread every
yeah, 'cause
time someone.
I'm still getting mail that says Veteran Healing Church,
Cool. Yeah.
DBA,
Yeah.
because what we were first, right, was we started as the Church of the Sacred Synthesis, like
Yeah. That was
that
the
was
that
our
was the first.
founding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
Exactly.
and then we had some DBAs that we were doing for specific projects, like
Yeah.
Veteran Healing Church is when we were
Yeah.
going and serving medicine to veterans in ceremony,
Yeah.
and then, then we discovered Psilomethoxin, right?
Yeah.
And so we created a DBA that was the Church of Psilomethoxin, right? And that seemed fitting, and it was fitting. I mean, and it still is in a lot of ways because what we knew, you and I, when we went, we had talked a lot about this as we were working with it, like just the concepts of like church and what that would feel like. And then I remember we went on that hike with one of our
Yeah.
veteran
Yeah.
friends, and he was
Yeah.
all beat up from war,
4 years
and
ago.
yeah, he had, like, renewed he looked like he was almost born again, and it is from a microdose, and, we were like, "Yeah, this is definitely a gift from God," and so we asked him, we're like, "Do you wanna be the first member of our church?" This was something that we evolved on the fly throughout this walk we were on, and,
Yeah.
um,
I s
and he said,
yeah.
"Yes," and I said, "So we have a church."
Yeah, so what you're saying, Ben, is that we made our church in a cow field, in
Exactly.
a cow pasture that was full of magic mushrooms, which was the whole reason that we were there. And it's on Army Corps engineer land. Yeah. It was it
Yeah,
was
Granger
it
Lake.
was yeah, psychedelic mushrooms on government land. That's the best kind of mushrooms we found, right, in growing out
Yeah.
wild. You wanna have, like, some kind of government thing in there, whether there's some, high speed stuff in the ground, some of the cool
Well,
metals or
it seems the government is growing mushrooms, they're growing weed. Like, you can go to all these different military installations or
yeah,
Corps of Engineer lands around the
yeah,
country and find these things. So, yeah, as you're saying, like, this is at Granger Lake in just north of Austin.
yeah, Austin area.
There's tons of open expanse around this lake that they're leasing to cattle farmers, and there's hiking trails, there's all these beautiful vegetation and mushrooms growing in all the cow patties. And if that's not an indicator, like, wherever we're cultivating cattle, if the climate is conducive, mushrooms will be growing. They just sort of follow the cows around.
I think they call that I'm just gonna make I think they call it Hinduism. No, or I'm just just totally making yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, yeah, we're intimately connected with that stuff of humans. There's no mushrooms growing in animals until humans domesticate them. As far as like anything of that we would know about. So yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah. So so we were changing our name to the as far as what we were going to front with to the Church of the Sacred Synthesis, which was
Yeah,
our
we're gonna have a
original
coming out
name.
party,
Yeah, well,
right?
it was our coming out party, and
Entheogenesis.
we can talk about I was like, "Hey, we need a church of Psilomethoxin because people don't know what our church is about. A church of sacred synthesis." While the angel on my left here, it doesn't, they don't know who we are. I'm like, the church of Psilomethoxin is just like a church of the Holy Sacrament, a church of the Eucharist, a church of the here's our sacramental thing, and that's how people would know us to start. And so, yeah, it was funny how well timed their attack was on our coming out party.
Almost like insider timing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yes, 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 yes.
It was
Well, I mean,
very
because
so
yeah,
we had been broadcasting, we had been prepping and sharing our celebration, which was entheogenesis, and, and really was meant to be I would say, like, a revolution in festival sort of approach
yeah,
where we were bringing people together who were going to give talks, activations. I had heard almost nothing about these types of events before our event, right? Most of them were like just music festivals, people get together and dance and sing and whatever it is. But, we wanted to do something different. We wanted to bring in
yeah,
some wisdom, some teachings around, energy and spiritual work and how to work with sacraments and other plant medicines that would help nourish people and give them support so that they would have wisdom in their own life personally and not necessarily have to go to a healer or to a doctor. And we would crystallize it in a dance, a celebration of movement and expression. Interestingly enough, we are checking in to this space to begin putting the event together, and we get alerted that, hey, did you read there's an article that someone wrote about you. I'm like, wow, that is, well timed
yeah,
indeed, right? And so
highly coordinated.
exactly. So which came out April 12th, right? And then
The days
yeah,
the
April 13th.
days are a little blurry. Yeah, I
Well,
think
April 13th was our event, and we checked in the day before, and that's when we got alerted. And so and yeah, so well coordinated and well timed to try to throw a monkey wrench in our plan. But the plan was at Entheogenesis, we were going to announce the the revival of our original namesake and shift back to Church of the Sacred Synthesis, as we were aware that, like, thinking about synthesis as a bringing together of many different aspects to create a whole thing. And so that was we did, of course,
but
but then
yeah.
there was as we know, all these different conversations around why we changed our name to the Sacred Synthesis, Church of the Sacred Synthesis, and people didn't take into account that was our name first.
And we have the water bottles from our event that show our name on it. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, just fun stuff, especially for some of the people that have been supporting us and want to be like, I've believed in it all along. Yeah, that they're getting their good information now.
Right. Well, exactly. Yeah, and this is really an invitation for, as you're saying, for all those individuals who may have been quiet and not
Yeah,
necessarily like come out in opposition publicly. There's we have tons of compassion. I have I have the utmost compassion for people who are associated with us that may have felt a little of that sting because
yeah,
as me myself am a true believer all along, but as an outsider that's like, okay, I support and believe what you're saying. I can see how it would be create some resistance. And so, we ultimate compassion here, but now the invitation is like, now we can really look at the truth as we knew it all, as we were bringing forward. And it's not been easy to continue to bring this forward, right?
no,
When we tried to illuminate the truth when we were at USF, their chemists had threats placed on him to silence him. All these different steps along the way, the forces that opposed us were hoping that we would quit or that we would give up. As I told you, like, you don't know how to quit. You don't know how to lose. Neither do I. And I think that's an important aspect. Like, they didn't know who they were messing with when they
clearly,
start.
clearly. They just didn't do their homework, or, maybe they had the luxury of just shooting people without, without care. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It's put us on a journey of like really getting solid and really bringing forward something that is meaningful.
Yeah, and, you know, the just oh, that's
Yeah,
magical. Yeah, it doesn't want
exactly.
hold on, no, hold on. Is it gonna pick it up now? Is
Nope.
there a place where it picks it up?
Right, maybe right next to your head. Almost there.
It's magical, yeah. Anyway, yeah, the baby pictures don't so
Yeah, exactly. So if you're watching this, we'll make sure that you have access and that you should have access to the baby pictures.
so we should probably go a little technical, Ben, right, and just give our, especially our members, our supporters, like, do you wanna do a little bit of a deep dive on the data? So in other words, because right, because well, I'm just saying people have this right now, right? This will be in the show notes, and church members already have this data.
That's right. Yeah, go
Anything
for
you
it.
want me I can, we
Yeah, well,
can talk
in the
about what's
deeper
in here.
science stuff you can do totally take the lead on that. That is outside of me understanding, like, sort of the receptors and
Yeah,
where they work in the brain and, like,
yeah.
how the enzymes are working at the surface level. You have a much more breadth of knowledge in that way.
Yeah, I'm just I appreciate that. I just mean more some of the, is it worth it, the science of the different, fragments and the different, substances, right? Or is it, do you wanna is it worth diving into that? We don't have
Yeah,
to.
I mean, for some people that I mean, that can be very helpful, and
Yeah,
I'm gonna say that 99% of people don't know what that means. They don't know anything about fragmentation or, they don't even know, like, say, like, mole weight, like,
sure.
what's the molar mass of something? I mean,
Well,
it's but
maybe yeah, I'll tell you what, so maybe I can do we'll go through the 4 things that it can be at 235.1446. How does that
right.
sound?
That
Right
sounds
on.
great.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's what people wanna know about, so we're gonna see how well the molecule
I
holds
got
up.
it.
We'll get the idea. Anyway, so this is psilocybin, 4-hydroxy 5-methoxy DMT. DMT being dimethyltryptamine, 2 methyl groups, and the end of the tryptamine. So and I'll put it down, when the critics of 235.15 came out of USF 3 years ago, right? You'll correct all my dates. Years ago, it could have been 10 to 20 different things. When you get the 235.1456, what we measured, which is just 10 Daltons away from 235.1446, which is the molar mass, mass to charge ratio for psilocybin, right? It can only be 4 different things. And those 4 different things are going to be either the hydroxyl in the 4th position or in the 6th or the 7th, the ortho or the meta, okay? Or that oxygen goes down to the bottom and forms 5-MeO nitric oxide, which is a oxidative byproduct when it's in the free base form of 5-MeO-DMT oxidized. Okay, so how do you then know which of those positions it's in? So that's where I was at the Jesse told me, okay, I have the measurement in there, but looking at those fragmentation patterns, and I brought back the Bufo study, and I'm like, okay, well, this Bufo study then shows for the first time ever uh, the location, the identification of these other 4-hydroxylated 5-MeO-DMTs. And because they break into different fragmentation patterns. As an example, there's the fragmentation pattern from that 235.1446 down into 162 in the toad isomers that happens for both of those isomers that Psilomethoxin never breaks into. Psilomethoxin breaks down into a 164 fragment that the toad isomers never break down into. And then there's more of that. There's more of that. So basically, and for the nitric oxide, right? If that's what you're measuring, the 5-MeO-DMT nitric oxide, that breaks down into 19, right? Is your molar mass, and our stuff doesn't do that, and our stuff breaks down into 217, right? So
Right,
these have
exactly.
these different pathways, and that's the whole sort of science of it. Is you take the molecule and then you shoot energy into it, and then it breaks down into pieces in these places, right? And then you can though capture these pieces and orbit trap them and spin them around a million times, and then keep on doing that. Whereas the stuff like Hamilton was doing, as an example, he was doing gas chromatography, where you're heating stuff up and blowing it up and try to look at the splatter pattern. So this is the $1.4 million retail machine where you can
Yeah,
really
and so and
see
just
this stuff.
just so people can understand, the machines that were used in the publishing of the original pseudoscientific article were 50,000. They can resolve to 50,000 to 1 resolution, and this Orbitrap machine resolves to 500,000 to 1. So you can actually see individual pieces and fragments of what's happening.
Yeah, you can see two more decimal points. Yeah, and to get an idea, like the decimal points is the last two of those four. It's like 74 is a hydrogen molecule. So these are really tiny
Which
little
is which
amounts.
is the lightest, right? We say the has the lowest molar mass of any other molecules, correct?
Yeah, yeah, and
That's
I'm
how
sure
we can
people will correct us in
confirm
any
the
yeah any of our
difference.
science words, but yeah, and then this thing you're shooting extra energy in it, and then you're calculating that extra value in there, and then you're measuring those amounts. You can do a whole thing in reverse, and this is what one of the things Jesse's going to do this summer is run it in what's called negative mode. Never heard of that? Me neither. Negative mode is where you shoot electrons in to make it more negative rather than protons in to make it more positive, and then you measure the differences there. And you can do that because Psilomethoxin will work. It's a kind of molecule that will fit into that negative mode treatment. And it's, I think the word is achiral, where it doesn't, it's achiral. It doesn't have a right handed or left handed. Check
Right.
that out. Check that out, Ben. That's really
So it's
important.
it's universal.
It's,
It's
yeah, see, I kind of dropped that on you exactly.
yeah, great.
It doesn't have a left and a right like we know with MDMA. Those two sides of that molecule have totally different effects, right? One's more
Right,
empathogenic
amphetamine.
and tactogenic, and the other, or same thing, ketamine, MDMA, and
Yep,
the other
yep.
has the more, for MDMA, has the more amphetamine effect, which for certain people is not as positively tolerated.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah, man, the chemistry is real. Yeah, so when you, let's see, I'm gonna check my notes here for what else is. Well, there's other numbers that are diagnostic, but they're just all those different pieces, right? And of course, but people will say things. Let's just do some of those myths. So, we'll hear words like steric hindrance and things like that. Okay, so
Okay. Yeah,
first
tell
off,
me about steric hindrance.
whatever, yeah, that's a red herring. And when
Yeah,
somebody says
exactly.
that, they're talking about steric hindrance in bacteria, which is a real thing, which doesn't apply here. So first off, the PSIH, it only 4 hydroxylates. That's called regiospecificity, where it only wants to hydroxylate in the one position. It doesn't hydroxylate in the 5, 6, 7, any other positions, right? That's all it wants to do. Now, but it's very promiscuous as a substrate. So a substrate promiscuity called, you give me a tryptamine, I hydroxylate that. You know what I mean? You give me 5-MeO DMT, I
And
hydroxylate
so I'll
that
ask
too.
about the PSIH. Because
Yeah.
there's PSIH that's found in the toad, and then PSIH that's found in the mushroom, right? They're just slightly different in
Well,
their
no,
behavior.
no, no. The hydroxylase that's in the toad is a different hydroxylase. Yeah, it does it differently. It has its own one in there because it's doing some different chemistry. It's doing the
Okay.
5-MeO chemistry, yeah, in there.
Yeah. And so that's what we've discovered, that the hydroxylase in the toad only 6 and 7s, and the
Yes, exactly. Well, what's happening.
hydroxylase in
What's
the
happening is that it
mushroom.
fives. It fives. It doesn't four. It only
Right.
fives, and so then it fives again because it's going from when making refining into 5-MeO, and then if it can't five, it's sixes, and if it can't six and five, it's sevens, which is why seven is the lowest. And so maybe, yeah, you might. So yeah, so people don't realize that there's other stuff in the toad. I mean,
This
hope
guy.
I'm not. Well, but I mean, like, are we the first ones talking about it? Well, people don't read the papers. Yeah, but there's besides.
They should know, because they talk, there's all this, gosh, here we go. There's all BS around the myth of the entourage effect, yet there's all these other things that are inside of the toad that are psychoactive. And so they're just like, leave the toad alone. Let's just
Ben, you're
the
going to
5 and
collapse the
like,
narrative. Ben, be careful. You're going to collapse
yeah,
the narrative. Yeah.
yeah, that's our job. It's
Okay.
like the truth. The truth will always collapse the narrative, because the narrative is based around illusion.
Yes.
And so the truth is, there's a lot more than just 5, 6 HO, 5-MeO DMT. There's more than 5-MeO DMT.
Yes.
There's many different minor alkaloids that are in
Yes.
the toad, which are, I think,
Yes.
very important to
Yes.
understand, so that, because they do have benefit. And if anyone that's worked with actual bufo at a lower dose, 20 milligrams, 15 milligrams, you can feel this.
Oh,
I can
yeah.
feel the
Oh, the
support in the
somatic,
system.
exactly. The somatic,
It's
exactly.
somatic support.
Somatic and emotional support. Yeah, absolutely.
And so obviously when you go to full release, you're just shutting things off, but it doesn't mean that there's not physiological changes that are happening. You just may not be aware of them. Your ego may be like, "Ooh, I don't know this the difference." But your body knows, like, just like your ego doesn't know Tylenol's working in your brain until you're like, "Wow, I'm not feeling any pain." So
Exactly.
it's we hyper intellectualize everything,
Yeah.
because the system's trying to pitch a narrative, and the narrative are people who are working with the pure compound, or pure molecule, as they call it. Uh, but
Wait,
there's a
but
reason
it,
why this exists in nature,
yeah,
like it does.
but Ben, is the pure molecule really pure?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it probably has an oxide in it. It's
I just,
oxidized.
yeah, well, we know you've got to make a lot of toxic waste to make anything
Well,
when you synthesize it in the
that's the
lab.
drawback, and that what people will argue against. But we know the chemistry, because we've done it. Unless it's being grown in yeast or bacteria, it's producing around 5 times the amount of toxic waste
That's a
that.
minimum. I've been
Yeah,
researching.
yeah,
It might be up to
yeah.
50 times. Yeah.
Exactly, by weight, right? So
Yeah,
if you want
exactly.
to produce a kilo, at least 5 kilos of toxic waste, non-recyclable, it's like bury the.
Well, yeah, where are they burying all that toxic waste from all the MDMA they're making in the Netherlands?
Exactly, good question.
They're walking out of the forest and they're just burying it in the
Oof,
forest. So people are like, yeah, I don't want to go rave in the forest
love it.
in Netherlands because I'd be dancing around in toxic waste. Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
so,
I feel we have so much to talk about. I know, so it's a little bit overwhelming in a good way.
yeah, that's great. It's not a
Yeah.
challenge,
So
it's
so
just
how so how's this?
every day.
What we can tell people is, so there's in the toad, there's 5-MeO DMT. There's going to be some bufotenine in there and other things as well. Mexamine,
I'm
a
maximum,
little bit of, yeah, a little bit of DMT. And there is, besides 5-MeO DMT, there's also going to be some trace quantities of what is it? Well, my brain just told, yeah, of these 6 and 7 hydroxylated compounds, which are there, they can occur as high as like 20% compared to that, let's say 80% of the 5-MeO DMT. So think of all the classic entourage effect kind of concepts with cannabinoids or any kind of tryptamine. The same concept. So make some of those, and it appears so far research and bioassay, yeah, like you said, those have some somatic and emotional support aspects to them that help balance out some of the more 5-MeO effects. So that's always seems like what nature's doing anyways, trying to balance all that stuff out. And no one talks about it, if you have a pure molecule, right, of any kind, THC otherwise, and psilocybin, and you give it, it becomes biphasic in a big enough
Right.
amount because the body's like,
Exactly.
I only can do one thing, which is to put the brake on. Yeah, when you have all the entourage, cannabinoids, terpenes, or tryptamines, yeah, then the body can basically have a continued effect where the body can work with it and support it. And so,
Exactly.
yeah, and I guess we could talk about right that we've actually fed bufo exudate to mushrooms, right? Have we
Yes,
told
we
any?
have, exactly. I
Have we
thought I heard
talked
some
to
applause.
have we talked to
Yeah.
anybody about that?
No, we haven't, and I think that,
Wow.
that's a very important, topic, and
Wow.
in that
I'm blowing my own mind right now, Ben. Wow,
yeah,
yeah, go for it.
exactly.
Yeah.
We don't yet know, uh, we don't yet know the deeper science, but I can tell you based around our bioassay, and I've been working with
Ben, can we go back to the beginning? Can we go back to like candidelic before you?
oh, yeah, please,
No, you
go
okay?
there.
Okay, so so we can give proper credit where credit was due, where credit is due. I could run into my little closet and go get this, vial. When we went to Candidelic, and that was
2022.
2022. Thanks.
Oh,
In
excuse me, no, that was February of 2023. This is just a few months before entheogenesis.
Yeah, yeah. So we went there, very positively received. There was a good article about us, kind of calling it the love child of 5-MeO DMT, psilocybin love child of 5-MeO DMT, and psilocybin. And at that event, we were standing outside waiting for it to kick off, and we ran into a gentleman named Tony. And Tony was a psychonaut and bufo enthusiast who had, unbeknownst to us, not right then because of anything we had done where he had heard about it or anything like that, because
Right.
we no one, might have been one of the first times anyone had really talked about us, that he had fed bufo exudate to mushrooms because he was inspired by the joking gar stuff. And he gave us that stuff, and we all took it and we were like,
Yep.
wow. And I still have some of that. And so I'm just saying, so like it's not out of nowhere also. Yeah. So like, these this is all part of that lineage, sharing an homage, whatever. We're like still in Tony's lineage that way. Tony, we went and did what you had posited on your own before you even met us. So thanks. Yeah, good job, bro.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Tony. And thank you for reminding me of Candidelic. The Candidelic is a place, for those of you who don't know or who didn't attend, was in Miami of that year, and we offered a 100-person
Yeah,
Psilomethoxin meditation to close out Candidelic. And, I can see and remember everyone who is now, I would say, like a trusted voice in psychedelics that are in the main view. They were there and attended this ceremony, and the feedback was incredible from people telling us how unique this was and how that they're believers. And so it's really amazing because this is the part of the story where people are now going to be, this is sort of the permission slip for them to say, yes, I did sit there, I do remember this experience, and
yeah.
I knew all along. I just, of course, wanted to cover my own self because, why not? Why everyone, most people are in self-preservation mode, and rightfully so.
It's like social credit score in China. I mean, you understand why people would want to make sure that the virtue signaling is all lined up. We get it. There's about to be a lot of people that people have heard of that have taken our stuff who are now going to be talking about it, and some of those are very, very household names.
Exactly. Exactly. So feels good to know that. to remember
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so clearly we're not motivated exactly to talk about the SVU part, about all the yeah, the negative stuff, but that's fine. But,
Yeah,
yeah,
oh,
the
we've beaten that well, I mean, in my we can, but we beat that horse a lot,
no,
I
yeah,
think.
yeah, I just mean the baby pictures are, pretty amazing, right? And
That's right.
let me share this with everyone. For so yeah, so don't let me forget to talk about what Jesse's gonna do this summer, but for you and I to see Psilomethoxin in the mass spec means that psilocybin has to be in there because that's what you're seeing. That's what you're seeing. That's how you get to see psilocin is because you got psilocybin in your stuff.
Psilocybin.
Most of yeah, and that psilocybin by the measure of testing is basically getting changed into psilocin that you can measure. That's all I'm saying is people don't even understand that. So
Right. Yeah, and the common thing and what was the common narrative is Psilomethoxin is highly unstable. What would you say to
yeah,
that?
let's make fun of that. Yeah. Wait, that reminds me of an actual story where we were at the MAPS conference, right? And we were standing outside of the MAPS conference, and you can make sure so, I say all the right words of what we actually, what actually went down since
Never
you were
there.
there. We were there at the MAPS conference last summer, and Hamilton Morris walked out. We're standing out front, and he walks up to us. I'm like smiling at him, He's smiling at me. I'm like, cool. And he's like, you shouldn't sue me. And I'm like, why? You ruined my life. You ruined all of our lives. And uh, he said, Silmethoxin's highly unstable. And I said, Psilocyin's highly unstable. What are what are you talking
Exactly.
about? Yeah. So that's the whole brilliance, right? Of the let's see, the phosphoryl cap. And who's the father of the phosphoryl cap? That's Albert Hoffman. We know him. He's the father of LSD. He's also the person who first synthesized psilocin, right? And then he converted it into the shelf stable prodrug of psilocybin that's all everyone's doing. You figured out that. I really love that. Everyone's just selling the formulations and they're just basically selling formulations of psilocin. They're selling psilocin drug delivery systems. But
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. So we've got all these godfathers in our church, including Maria Sabina, right? That's how Albert
That's
Hoffman
right.
was able to get the mushrooms, right? From her, isolate psilocin, then later synthesize it, make it into psilocybin, and then send those pills back with Gordon Wasson for her to test and for her to eat and go, yeah, this is I can feel the spirit of the little children, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, so all those people, she's a godmother in our church. And then we got lots of like crazy Algerian shamans running around taking mushrooms at least 10,000 years ago that we can
At least, yeah.
we can all claim and glom onto. Yeah. So
Yeah. And this is the importance of what we're doing here at the church, right? It's like remembering where we came from
yeah.
before
Outer
these were
outer
yeah, exactly. And even, in the human experience, before these were medicines, before these were like treatments
yeah.
for depression or anxiety, like
Word,
these were
I just realized
wait, these
that word has like mediate in it. That's the wrong word, man. Right? Someone to get in between you. Sorry, didn't mean to break your flow, bro.
no,
Just
no, you're
yeah.
it's great. I wanna just touch a little on all these topics that we're talking about, but what's been coming forward for me recently is these over medicalization, right? Like every single conversation around psychedelics
Yeah.
is like treatment for depression, treatment for anxiety,
Treatment. Trick or treatment. I'd rather have the
and and
trick.
and in doing this, they're sort of giving the government again permission to continue to limit our access to these important plants, fungi, and animals that have existed before governments existed, before the spoken word existed, before the written language
That's
existed.
why they're suspect.
Exactly. And so, I want to just like always frame this in that we should have permission and access to all of these irrelevant of some sort of laws of man, because the laws of man are overly broad and unjust and limit our experience as human beings.
Well, well, that's the basic way that you fight that stuff as a constitutional lawyer, it's like it's vague and overbroad, right? The laws. And yeah. World War II made us
Different
over.
analog act.
Well, World War II compressed us as the whole federalist worldwide empire, and now we're closing the story on that to something new. So yeah, but we can't keep on sending people to wars over oil and then give them MDMA made from oil. Because
Sure,
that is
exactly.
because that is the because that's you know what that's called? That's called the petroleum loop.
Yep. Well,
You don't want
that's what they're wanting to do, give active duty soldiers MDMA so they can go back and keep going.
yeah. So I
Well,
mean that tells
I'll tell you what I discovered when I started working with psychedelics.
what
What they don't realize, it's the hidden truth. It's like the Trojan horse in consciousness is that once these individuals start working with psychedelics, they're like, what am I fighting for?
yes. Yeah.
Right? What am I fighting for? I'm like, I'd rather fight to save my brothers and sisters' lives than go and then you realize you are a brother and a sister to the world, and not just
Exactly.
your country that there's some sort of artifice or like a egoic structure, but we're all cousins to the whole world. We're connected. If you heal yourself, you heal the world.
Amen.
I think there's an important, there's a view here that I'd like to always make sure we're bringing things back to is these are important compounds and they can liberate us and take us out of the war mind, take us out of the. This is this is why 5-MeO is so important and psilocybin is so important. Mushrooms are great, psilocybin, LSD, they're great, they're wonderful, but again, they are working in the activating system, the sensory system, so they're creating, like, change, which is great, but first, it's like surrender, surrender. So, thinking about, like, ceremonial approaches, we've been working a lot with, 5-MeO and psilomethoxin and mushrooms and some of the ceremonies that we facilitate, and a lot of the classical approaches, we were working with 5-MeO at the end, right? Because it's what they say is,
Yeah.
like, the most powerful psychedelic.
Yeah.
So they're going in working with mushrooms or ibogaine first, and then 5-MeO to sort of close the loop. And we've been exploring working with them in reverse, right? 5-MeO first,
Wonderful.
creating space, creating
Yeah.
space. And when space is created, then the change can be limitless. It's less of like, I need to fix this problem, and more like, I have all this access. Who do I want to
Yeah.
become? Where do I
Top
want
down
to go?
yeah, top down approach, yeah. Start from yes, exactly, yeah. Love it. Love it. Well, I mean, we know, we can talk about all the heads in the 5-MeO space that use our sacrament before, during, after other kinds of MEO and, in concert with other kinds of 5-MeO work.
That's right. It
Yeah,
provides
on
this
ramp,
beautiful
off
scaffold.
ramp. Yeah,
Right.
people that are serving it are taking Psilomethoxin sacrament so they can be in the 5-MeO, 5-HT1A headspace.
That's right, and it's great for it's long lasting. And what really showed me this proved to me maybe a couple 2 years ago when I first created the Unity Mist to test out that cinemathoxin. I'm like, oh yeah, this is cinemathoxin. Like it was the same experience. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Like I feel like I'm in the ocean. I'm just like floating around here. I'm like, oh, this is nice. I'm in this like supportive fluid, and that for me, like I had the faith, but this was like a physiological yes. This was in the body. Yes. This is definitely what we're experiencing.
I have a question for you, Ben. Yeah, what does it feel like to be a HT1A pioneer? Because most people have no idea what you're talking about. That's what I'm coming to terms with. It's like
Yeah.
I want to work with my own HT1A, and I do. So people are like, "What? I'm just trying to go to
Right.
the next festival, bro. Why would I want to?"
That may be part of it, but this is really, really important. This brings me into my perspective on self-mastery. And so, in the pursuit of self-mastery, you're not necessarily like becoming a master, like a master Jedi. There is that, but the self mastery is the awareness and the continuous evolution of the human vehicle. And when you become someone that can go into awareness, you can sort of zoom out from the you part of the equation and be seeing yourself from the perspective of God, as the creator. And so when you can do that, you can let go of control and let go of having to manipulate the reality around you and understand that it's all inside of you. And then you can use the A receptor, the other psychedelics or the other compounds to stimulate the change that is needed in life to adapt, to overcome, to become something more than you are. But first, it's extremely important to fully accept who you are, where you are in space and time. Because if you don't, you can't actually move effectively. If you think of things like, um, unless you're going to be still like a yogi and live in a temple and do nothing, we in the Western world have experienced that we must go outside, we must, experience life, go to the store, whatever it is. So to do that, first identifying where we are in space and time gives us the highest and best way to move forward. Otherwise, if we don't know where we are right now in all these different aspects, how can we actually get to where we want to be? Right. So working in the 1A receptor with 5-MeO, Psilomethoxin, to soften and become fully in surrender, which is a form of acceptance, like radical
Yes.
self-acceptance. And from that place, okay, now who do I want to become? Am I happy with my life? Are there elements of my life I want to change? Because you can identify them and see them in a way that is it's not non-judgmental. They just are. They're just there. Like I have Mark. I have Mark here. I have whatever. And you go like, okay, now I want to become a pilot. Now I want to become a chemist. Whatever it is. And now you can, because you created space by working in the 1A receptor and letting go of things that aren't authentic to you. Now you can bring things in that are in alignment with your desires, and you have space to hold them. Otherwise, if we're always working in the psilocybin or always working in LSD compounds, all we're doing is mixing up and changing, but without creating space, those changes aren't cemented in. They
Yeah.
become more like seeking behavior.
You gotta let the remix settle. That's what, yeah. You gotta
So,
know when the remix is done. Amen.
yeah, I know, and I know this conversation sort of has taken like an asymmetrical evolution, which I'm thankful for our ability to continue to play and bend reality around things, to have a good conversation. Is there anything that you feel like we've left behind or things that you want to cover or address before we close out?
That's good questions. Let's see. I can't think of things sort of in this sort of story of history for people, right? The the myth, we know steric hindrance, that's not a thing. I can't think of any other myths out there. I mean, the lawsuit's pretty straightforward. So, sorry. Well, we'll talk about this. This will be my last thing, and thanks for the asymmetric pointing out. Yeah, what is Jesse going to be doing this summer? So we can talk about what he's. So this summer, Jesse is going to be testing uh, toad exudate fed versions of our sacrament in the mass spec. That means he's going to be testing. So what do we expect is in that toad fed sacrament? Yeah, you could have 4,6-5-MeO DMT, 4,7-dihydro, 5-MeO hydro, 5-DMT. We're going to find out, and these are just further confirmations of, it's going to in the one run with the presence of the toad 6 and 7, 5-MeO DMT. Categorize all that stuff at the same time. So that's the ultimate gold standard beyond NMR, right? And the reference standard is to have all the different components in one run. So you'll have the 4, 6, and 7 versions of 5-MeO DMT go through the same mass spec breakdown. And so those individual assignments to the toad for the 6 and 7, right, and to the mushroom for the 4 of the 5-MeO DMT, at that point will be yeah, I mean, it won't be any other possibility. I mean, there's no possibility right now because of the fragments, but that'll just be the final test, and yeah, that stuff will probably be been published in the Journal of Analytic Toxicology. Same one that the Bufo study was in. All hail the Bufo study. Yes. That's super awesome. What does the Bufo study say? Well, the Bufo study says if you use methanol by itself, that definitely doesn't work. We already know that. But you have to pull out the dominant alkaloid to see the smaller stuff. right? That's the key thing you have to do, using the right solvent, and then you have to use all the right different techniques to find stuff. So if you're not trying to find things, it's very easy to do. It's very easy to dry lab, which is
But
a
to not find things, of course, right?
yeah, yeah, no, which is a term that Jesse turned me on to, which I mean I knew was a thing that happens, but yes, where the people just completely fake results. Yeah, Jesse basically is like does federal, like, public defender work as a scientist for people who've been wrongly, they're wrongly in the whole, drugs aspect of the criminal justice system,
That's
like
right.
showing the evidence they're using to put people in jail for 10 and 20 years, is, the 95% of it's fabricated.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm just these are,
Wow.
well, because they already know, like they catch you with THC, they just got to prove some THC's in there, and
Exactly.
really
And they're
how
just like, oh,
much?
this is
Yeah,
like,
yeah. So,
they can make
but
of how much.
yeah, so Jesse, so he'll do the studies over the summer. He'll submit that for publication. I think publication 3 months kind of thing. And yeah, I don't think there's anything else with this juncture. You tell me like we're talking about as far as the lawsuit itself or any of those mechanics.
No,
People can figure that stuff out on and yeah, we welcome the engagement now. We welcome the engagement,
all day.
right? We have stuff to talk about. People want to talk about the science or any other things. Yeah. So is this going to go out before my trip? So should I? There's no point to drop my trip coming up.
No, it's not gonna go out before your trip, which is like
Okay.
a couple days, right?
I'm gonna head out tomorrow. So by
Yeah,
the
no,
time
we'll
people
probably
see this, let's see.
it'll be done.
We'll have some cool. I bet we'll have some cool updates beyond just this. God
Oh,
willing.
for the next one.
Well, after Thursday. So,
Amazing. Yeah, I'm looking forward to those. Well, we'll just keep the conversation evolving. So, all right. Well, yes. Well, thank you everyone for joining and tuning in. Thanks Ian for, for chatting this morning and getting deep and sideways and all the different ways so that we can continue to illuminate, what we're up to, what we've been up to.
light is the light reflecting in the right direction? All right, anyway.
I mean, there's something there.
There's something there, exactly.
There's something
Hey,
there.
when we take away the molecule, there's something there. All right. Okay.
We want to continue to bring forward the truth. Honestly, the key here is if there's any questions, like we want to engage. If you have a perspective, share it. Let's get in conversation. We're not running from anything. Actually, we're running towards something. We love all of you and appreciate you supporting us along this path.
Yes, yes.
And as you learn about us, we appreciate you coming in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Welcome.
have yeah, exactly. I have a deep a deep belief that we are at the precipice of the shift in consciousness, the shift in humanity, and we're really in that membrane right now. So the more of us that gather together, that say yes, the stronger this movement grows and the more liberation that people get to experience in their life. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. Yeah, be well on your path.
Peace.